For most of the last 2 centuries, a particular argument was made about the Bible, and it was made confidently. The people in it were legends. The kings never reigned. The cities never stood. Pontius Pilate was a literary invention. King David was the Jewish equivalent of King Arthur, a folk hero grown out of nothing. And then people started digging. What follows are 16 objects. Every one of them is real. Every one of them can be visited in a named museum by anyone who buys a ticket. None of them are relics. None of them are miracles. They are broken stone, scratched clay, and tarnished silver. And each one of them names a person, a place, or an event that the Bible names first. We will go roughly in order of age, from the oldest to the most recent discovery. And at the end, we will do something that these videos rarely do. We will talk honestly about what archaeology can prove and what it cannot, and why the difference matters more than the list itself. Because there is a way of presenting evidence like this that is not really honest. It stacks everything on one side of the table, keeps the difficult cases out of sight, and leaves the viewer with the impression that the matter is closed. That approach does not strengthen anyone's faith. It only makes the first real objection they meet feel like a betrayal. So we will put both columns on the table. The confirmations, which are genuinely extraordinary, and the gaps, which are genuinely there. Let us begin about 3,200 years ago in Egypt. Number 1. The Merneptah stele. It is a slab of black granite over 10 feet tall discovered in 1896 in western Thebes, and it now stands in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It was carved for Pharaoh Merneptah, the son of Ramesses II, to celebrate his military campaigns. Most of it is standard royal boasting, and then near the bottom comes one short line. Israel is laid waste, his seed is not. That is the oldest known mention of Israel anywhere outside the Bible, carved around 1208 years before Christ. And the Egyptian scribe did something revealing. He marked the other names in that list with the symbol for a city or a territory. Beside Israel, he used the symbol for a people, not a country yet. A people, already in the land, already significant enough for Egypt to name. Number 2. The Kedef Hinnom Silver Scrolls. In 1979, in a burial cave just outside the old city of Jerusalem, a team found 2 tiny rolled-up sheets of silver, each smaller than a cigarette. They were so fragile that it took 3 years to work out how to unroll them without destroying them. They are now in the Israel Museum. When they were finally opened, they carried Hebrew writing from around 600 years before Christ, and the words on them are these: "The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace." That is the priestly blessing from the book of Numbers, chapter 6. It is the oldest surviving text of the Hebrew Bible in existence. Written 4 centuries before the Dead Sea Scrolls, and worn around somebody's neck. Number 3. The Meshech stele, also called the Moabite stone, found in 1868 east of the Dead Sea in what is now Jordan. It is a black basalt slab covered in 34 lines of writing, and it dates to around 840 years before Christ. It is in the Louvre. It was written by Meshech, king of Moab, and it is his own account of a war. On it, Meshech names Omri, king of Israel. He describes Israel oppressing Moab for many years, and he describes his rebellion and his victory. Now open the Bible to 2 Kings, chapter 3. And Meshech, king of Moab, was a sheepmaster, and rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs. But it came to pass, when Ahab was dead, that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. The same king, the same rebellion, the same century. Told from the losing side in one account, and the winning side in the other. Number 4. The Tel Dan stele. In 1993, an archaeologist working in northern Israel noticed writing on a stone that had been reused in a wall. More fragments turned up the following year. The inscription is Aramaic, and it dates to the 9th century before Christ. It is in the Israel Museum. It was almost certainly erected by an enemy of Israel, boasting about killing 2 kings. And in that boast appear 4 Hebrew letters: Beit, Yod, Tav, Daleth, Wa, Daleth, the house of David. Before this stone was found, it was a serious academic position that David never existed, that he was a later invention, a founding myth with no man behind it. And then a hostile foreign king, writing within roughly a century and a half of David's lifetime, referred to the kingdom of Judah by the name of its founding family, casually, as a fact everyone in the region already knew. Number 5. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Discovered at Nimrud in 1846, it is a 6.5-foot tower of black limestone, carved on all 4 sides, dating to around 825 years before Christ. It is in the British Museum. It shows tribute being brought to the Assyrian king from 5 different regions. And the second panel is the one that matters. The caption reads, "Tribute of Jehu, son of Omri," and above it is carved a man on his knees, face to the ground in front of the Assyrian king. That is Jehu, king of Israel, named in 2 Kings. It is the only known picture of an Israelite king from the ancient world. We have no portrait of David, none of Solomon, none of Hezekiah. We have one, and in it he is bowing. Number 6. The Lachish Reliefs. When Sennacherib built his palace at Nineveh, he covered an entire room with carved panels celebrating one particular victory. They were excavated in the 1840s and are now in the British Museum, reassembled along a wall. They show in enormous detail the siege of a walled city, siege ramps, archers, battering rams, prisoners being led out, impaled bodies outside the walls. The city is named in the carving itself, Lachish. Now read 2 Kings, chapter 18. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah did Sennacherib king of Assyria come up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them. Archaeologists later excavated Lachish itself and found the siege ramps still there, along with hundreds of Assyrian arrowheads and sling stones, exactly where the carving says the attack came from. The picture and the ground agree with each other, and both agree with the text. Number 7. The Sennacherib Prism. A 6-sided clay cylinder covered in cuneiform made around 691 years before Christ. 3 copies survive. One is in the British Museum, one in Chicago, one in Jerusalem. It is Sennacherib's own official record of his campaign against Judah, written for his own archives. And this is what it says about Jerusalem. As for Hezekiah the Judahite, I shut him up like a caged bird within Jerusalem, his royal city. Read that boast very carefully because of what is missing from it. Sennacherib destroyed 46 cities of Judah and he lists them proudly, but he never claims to have taken Jerusalem. An Assyrian king, writing his own propaganda, records a siege that simply stops. The Bible says why it stopped. Sennacherib's own scribe records that it did. Number 8. The Siloam Inscription. In 1880, a boy wading through a water tunnel under Jerusalem noticed letters carved into the rock wall. The inscription is now in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. The tunnel itself is still there, and tourists still walk through it in the water. The writing describes the moment 2 teams of diggers, tunneling toward each other from opposite ends through solid rock, finally heard each other's picks through the stone and broke through. And the Bible names the project and the king who ordered it, and the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? 2 Kings, chapter 20, verse 20. You can walk through that verse today, in ankle-deep water in the dark. Number 9. The Babylonian Chronicle. A small, unremarkable clay tablet in the British Museum, part of a series of year-by-year records kept by Babylonian scribes. This one covers the early reign of Nebuchadnezzar. It is not literature. It is an administrative log written without emotion. And it records that in the 7th year of Nebuchadnezzar, in the month of Adar, he besieged the city of Judah, captured the king, appointed a king of his own choosing, and carried off heavy tribute to Babylon. The date works out to March of 597 years before Christ. It is one of the most precisely dated events in the entire Old Testament. And 2 Kings, chapter 24, describes the same siege, the same surrender of the king, the same replacement king installed by Babylon. Two completely independent record keepers describing the same fortnight. Number 10. The Cyrus cylinder, a barrel-shaped clay cylinder about 9 inches long, found in Babylon in 1879, now in the British Museum. It was written after Cyrus the Great took the city in 539 years before Christ. It has been called the first declaration of human rights, which overstates it, but its actual content is remarkable enough. Cyrus announces a new imperial policy. Peoples who had been deported by Babylon would be sent home. Their sanctuaries would be rebuilt. Their gods would be returned. That was the opposite of how empires had behaved for centuries, and the book of Ezra opens with exactly this. Now in the 1st year of Cyrus king of Persia, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom. The cylinder does not mention the Jews by name. What it does is confirm that the policy described in Ezra was the real, documented policy of that specific king. Number 11. The Great Isaiah Scroll. In 1947, a shepherd threw a stone into a cave near the Dead Sea and heard pottery break. What came out of those caves over the next decade changed biblical scholarship permanently. The Great Isaiah Scroll is the star of them. 24 feet of leather, containing the entire book of Isaiah, copied around 125 years before Christ. It is displayed in the shrine of the book in Jerusalem. Here is why it mattered so much. Before 1947, the oldest complete Hebrew manuscript of Isaiah dated to about 1,000 years after Christ. So there was a gap of more than a millennium between the text scholars had and the era they wanted to reach. Nobody could say what had drifted in that time. The Qumran scroll jumped the gap by 1,000 years in a single leap, and when the two were compared, they were substantially the same book. The differences were overwhelmingly spelling variations and small copying slips, nothing that changed the meaning of anything. Number 12. The Pilate Stone. In 1961, Italian archaeologists working in the ruined theater at Caesarea Maritima turned over a block of limestone that had been reused as a step. There was writing on the underside. It is now in the Israel Museum. The Latin is damaged but legible. It names Tiberius, and it names the man who dedicated the building, Pontius Pilatus, prefect of Judea. Until that block was turned over, there was no archaeological evidence that Pontius Pilate existed at all. He was known from the Gospels, from Tacitus, from Josephus, and from Philo, and a certain kind of critic dismissed all of those as unreliable. And the inscription corrects the Gospels on one small point in a way that is quietly reassuring. His title was prefect, not procurator. It is exactly the sort of detail that gets modernized in a legend and preserved in a record. Number 13. The Caiaphas Ossuary. In 1990, construction workers south of Jerusalem accidentally broke through the roof of a burial cave that had been sealed since the 1st century. Inside were 12 limestone bone boxes. One of them was far more ornate than the others, carved with rosettes. It is in the Israel Museum. Scratched twice into its surface in Aramaic is a name, Yehoseph bar Caiaphas, Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Inside were the bones of a man who had died in his 60s. And in the Gospel of John we read, Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. The high priest who presided over the trial of Jesus was a man whose family name was carved on his bone box by his own relatives, and that box is now behind glass, a short drive from where the trial took place. Number 14. The Pool of Bethesda. For a long time this was treated as proof that the Gospel of John was written late by someone who did not know Jerusalem, because John describes something oddly specific. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. 5 porches. That is an unusual design, and no such pool was known. Then excavations beside the church of St. Anne uncovered a large twin pool complex, cut in two by a central partition, with covered colonnades on all 4 outer sides. 4 sides, plus the one across the middle. 5 porches, exactly as described by a writer who was assumed not to have been there. Number 15. The Gallio inscription. Fragments of a stone letter found at Delphi in Greece, carrying a message from the Emperor Claudius. It mentions, almost in passing, that a man named Gallio was serving as proconsul of Achaia. The letter can be dated with real precision to around the year 51 or 52. And the book of Acts says, "And when Gallio was the deputy of Achaia, the Jews made insurrection with one accord against Paul and brought him to the judgment seat." That single overlap is one of the anchor points of the entire chronology of the New Testament. It lets historians fix Paul's 18 months in Corinth to an actual calendar date, and everything before and after it hangs from that peg. A footnote in a Roman civil service letter dates the ministry of the Apostle Paul. Number 16. The Erastus inscription, a paving stone in Corinth, still in the ground where it was laid near the ancient theater. The letters were originally filled with bronze, which was pried out long ago, but the carved slots remain perfectly readable. Erastus, in return for his aedileship, laid this pavement at his own expense. An aedile was a city official responsible for public works and finances, and at the end of the letter to the Romans, which Paul wrote from Corinth, he sends greetings from the people with him. Erastus the chamberlain of the city saluteth you. The city treasurer of Corinth, named in a letter of Paul, and a city official named Erastus who paid for a pavement in Corinth in the same era. We cannot prove beyond doubt that they are the same man, but it is a narrow window, a small city, and an uncommon name. Now for the honest part, and it is the most important thing in this video. Not one of those 16 objects proves that the Bible is true in the way most people mean when they say that. The Merneptah stele does not prove the Exodus. The Tel Dan stele does not prove that God chose David. The Pilate stone does not prove the resurrection. The Caiaphas ossuary tells us that a high priest lived and died. It says nothing whatsoever about whether the man he condemned rose again. So what did they actually do? They removed a specific argument. For a long time it was respectable to say that the Bible was writing about a world that never existed, populated by people who never lived, in cities that were never built. That argument is over, not because of faith, but because of dirt. The Bible turns out to be describing a real Iron Age Near East, with the right kings in the right decades, the right titles, the right imperial policies, the right water tunnels, and the right 5-porched pool. And honesty cuts both ways, so here is the other column of the ledger. There is no Egyptian record of the Exodus. Egypt did not write down its defeats, which is a real explanation, but it is still an absence and it should be named as one. The date of the fall of Jericho is genuinely disputed among archaeologists who are not hostile to the Bible at all. The city was destroyed, and its walls did fall, and the debate is about which century. We have found nothing at all from the life of Jesus of Nazareth himself. No object he touched. Nothing bearing his name from his lifetime. Anyone who tells you the spade has confirmed everything is selling something. It has confirmed a great deal in a specific range and left other questions wide open. And there is a pattern worth noticing in how these discoveries kept arriving. In nearly every case, the accusation came first and the object came second. David was a myth until 1993. Pilate was a legend until 1961. John did not know Jerusalem until the shovels reached the pool. None of that requires anyone to believe anything. It simply means that a text which has been tested against the ground for 2 centuries has held up, repeatedly, in the places where it can be tested at all. So what do we carry away from a room full of broken stone? 1. Faith was never meant to rest on artifacts, and it does not need to. If every one of these objects had stayed buried, the text would say exactly what it says. Evidence is a kindness, not a foundation. 2. Be careful with confident claims in both directions. The scholars who declared David a myth were confident, and they were reading silence as proof. Silence is not proof. It is only silence, and sometimes it lasts until somebody digs. 3. This book has always been unusually interested in the ground. It names real hills, real gates, real water systems, real officials with real job titles. That is not the grammar of legend. Legends float. This one keeps giving us addresses, and there is something worth sitting within the character of these objects. Not one of them was written to support the Bible. The Assyrians carved their reliefs to frighten their own subjects. Sennacherib wrote his prism to flatter himself. Mesha of Moab was celebrating a victory over Israel. The scribe who logged Nebuchadnezzar's siege was doing bookkeeping. Every one of these witnesses is hostile, indifferent, or entirely unaware of the text it happens to confirm, which is exactly the kind of witness a historian trusts most. And every so often, someone goes to one of those addresses and finds the stone still there.